that Bill Cosby and his raping white women is back in the news. And each time there is a case of black people being killed in a racist white supremacy event, whether it's police brutality or whether whatever the case may be, like South Carolina, it is countered by bringing up Bill Cosby and the charges that he raped white women. I don't know whether he did or did not, but each time there's something that is happening to black people based on race, they will drag up the case of black male raping white female, which is what the same charge that the South Carolina killer made in his manifesto. I just think the audience should be aware of that association.
Wow, thank you for connecting the dots. You're completely right. That's what the young man said in his manifesto. That's why he's killing black people, because they're raping our women. And this is what the charge of the Bill Cosby is accused of doing. And,
exactly. See, that's the white genetic survival charge that has been historic from the days when black men were being lynched and castrated up to the present. That's the fundamental white genetic survival issue. And consciously or subconsciously, it'll turn on people who classify themselves as white. So each time something happens to us, a white supremacy attack, they will drag the case of Bill Cosby back up in the news.
But the thing is, though, Dr. Welsing, so many of our people will not connect that dot. We'll just be out there trying to condemn the Bill Cosby, which they have been doing since last night, and they'll be doing it all day today again.
Right, and that will completely wipe out South Carolina.
Yes.
And the White Supremacy Manifesto was already being wiped out with focusing on the flags, focusing on the statue, as opposed to the total dynamic of racism, white supremacy. So I just think we ought to be aware.
All right. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, so we got to be aware, because that's why the Cosby's are back in the news. But also join us right now. We welcome Brother Nasir and Mahi Ali. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Brother Nasir. Welcome to WOL Radio. Is Brother Nasir there? Okay, well, we just have to keep moving then. Sorry about that, Brother Nasir, but we want to get your thoughts on what Dr. Welsing said. 800-450-7876. 800-450-7876. Does Dr. Welsing have a point? Does, whenever they bring up Bill Cosby, whenever is it to deflate the conversation, what's going on in Charleston? Is that what's going on, folks? What are your thoughts? Again, I'm just going to open up the phone lines, because I guess apparently we have some issues. 800-450-7876 is the number to call to get in, because I know a lot of people want to talk about that, because it's going to be all over the news with Bill Cosby. And people are saying that some people first were saying he set up. Jill Scott, by the way, the singer, says now she withdrawn her support for Bill Cosby after she found out about the deposition that was released. And so they released this deposition and said he made it on the deposition that he actually gave women quaaludes so that he could have sex with them. And you know, even though it sounded crazy at the time, a lot of people were supporting Bill Cosby. You may recall that that Eddie Murphy refused to do a skit. I think it was on Saturday Night Live, and they wanted to do a skit on Bill Cosby, and he refused to kick him. He says, "We're not going to kick a man when he was down." I wonder how Eddie Murphy feels about that today after these revelations. These women are going after him, vociferously, and especially out in L.A., Attorney Gloria Aldred represents many of them now. You're saying they were going after him. So it'll be interesting to see how Bill Cosby does with this, how he handles this, because he's got the money to handle a PR firm, hire a PR firm to handle all of this stuff. How's he going to deal with it? What are your thoughts? 800-450-7876. Again, that number is 800-450-7876. Your thoughts about what happened to Bill Cosby. Or is it correct that Dr. Welsing, is it correct what she said? You know, what are your thoughts? 800-450-7876. And somebody just tweeted me, says that we got to remember that Cosby and Donald Trump had a big fallout, and Donald Trump mentioned this. And Donald Trump has been on the hot seat. Let's go to line 2. Amir's joined us from D.C. Amir, your thoughts? Is Amir there on line 2?
There's a lot of subterfuge, and it is like Dr. Welsing had mentioned, I would say it's a clear diversionary means whether Bill Cosby committed those acts or not. But, I was looking at South Carolina and how in their efforts to sweep South Carolina under the rug, and I brought this up to some black folks. They said, they brought it to my attention. They said, do you think they'll go that far? And I mentioned to them, evidently, they're not keeping their eyes on history and the current events in the news. Yeah, but I want to tie in as well to say that when you raise the issue with the brother regarding Ethiopia and homosexuality, I think homosexuality is not even the last phase. I think the last phase of it is bestiality, because as it is just prepping the people, moving the people to another stage, that we will be so taken far from our culture, so far from our culture, traditions, that we would be almost unacceptable in the original sense as a people.
So you're saying that's going to be the next phase, bestiality?
Bestiality. Because I've worked on some jobs in European, the men, I found out the women, they were bragging on the fact that themselves having sex with animals. And I notice now, to me, in the near future, they will be promoting more so the relationship.
Before you go any further, these women who are bragging that they were having sex with animals, were they black women or white women?
White women and white men.
This is crazy.
So, to me, this is to move the people into another phase that we've been taken so far from our culture and our traditions. And as Dr. Welsing, Dr. Claude Anderson, and as those who did the presentation and power conference for our Queen Mother, Dr. Cress Welsing, to honor her, I think we're being taken so far away that we would be so unacceptable as in our traditions, in the Ma'at, in our culture. And this is what I'm seeing. The Europeans are dragging us down the road to be more like them and to be unacceptable to ourselves.
All right. Thanks, Amir. We got to run. We got to take a quick break. Actually, since last night, after it was revealed in his deposition, what he said that he actually admitted in his deposition that he did at one time give a female quaaludes. What are your thoughts? Dr. Welsing says we got to connect the dots, folks, and she put it so eloquently early in the beginning that every time this happens, it's to offset what we heard about the manifesto, this young man who shot up the church in Charleston. 800-450-7876. Go to line 4. Demetrius is in Virginia. Demetrius, your thoughts?
Yeah, Carl, good morning. Well, basically, like Dr. Welsing said, this is just another distraction. Just like the flag issue that came about. And when I first heard about the flag issue, I'm like, why are we talking about the flag when this tragic incident happened? And now we have the whole Bill Cosby thing, which I really don't care about either way. And like I think your guest said, you have to look, we'll start being so reactionary and look to the future because we have bigger issues going on. And I'll make one last point about black people accepting all black people. And what I mean by that is there's some black people that are melanated, but they have no interest in the larger black group. And that includes President Obama, too. So we start...
So is that a slam at the bourgeoisie?
Not just the bourgeoisie. I think there's everyday people who have no interest in the overall black people. So it doesn't have to be rich or successful or whatever. It's just a mindset. So, some people I deal with as being melanated American. They're not African American, in my opinion. And we have to look at people like that. And that's bourgeoisie. That's, the guy that works at the post office. These people don't have a black or African mindset. They have an American mindset or African American mindset. It's going to take that far. But you have to look at black people and then melanated Americans. The people who say, our country and this and this and that. And we have to really get a big picture mindset. We just happen to be here since slavery, if you're descended from slavery. And then those immigrants who come over since then are just that. They're just immigrants. And you really want to get, I know everybody has to live and survive just like I do. But I really understand that, hey, I'm here and I'm in the situation because of my history. And we have to have a bigger mindset to elevate ourselves out of that. And that's going to come with cutting people off the team. It just is.
Right.
So,
You know what? And Demetrius, you're right. I got to say, because I know some brothers, man, they don't care. There's nothing on this planet they don't care. They don't even, they may be sometimes maybe some kind of sport, some team it may be, but for the rest of the part, they just here. They don't pay taxes. They just don't participate in anything.
Right.
And they never will. So I know what you talk about. That we have some black folks who are like that. They are just here. They just existing.
Right.
And I thank you for your call. And I thank you for pointing that out. 800-450-7876 is going to take another call. And one of the things I've noticed too with the mainstream, quote unquote mainstream media, they're talking about white supremacy. I've never heard them use the phrase white supremacy. I mean, even white folks even referring to white supremacy. So I think Dr. Welsing's message is really reaching out, because now you're hearing it when folks are being analyzed on television. They're talking about white supremacy. They're not quite getting it how she's saying the system of white supremacy, or at least they're mentioning white supremacy, that phrase. 800-450-7876. Go to 800-450-7876. Go to line 3. Brother Darren's joining us from Baltimore. Brother Darren, do you agree with what Dr. Welsing said, that this whole episode with Bill Cosby is a distraction?
Absolutely, I agree, but I'd probably like to go a little further. The old saying we used to sing in the 60s, keep your eyes on the prize, and now it seems to be every week there's a surprise that's being sold to the people and told to the people by the corporate mainstream media for the most part. So it's clearly a form of social engineering. I think when we look at Bill Cosby, the script doesn't change. So we got to ask, was he involved in perhaps another deal? Was he looking at maybe a comeback on television as we knew last year with the sitcom, which was supposed to start, I believe, May of this year? Was he looking at purchasing another TV station as he was last year? And so the scripts don't change, because you remember every time Michael Jackson was coming out with a project, they would kill Michael Jackson's project so they could bankrupt Michael Jackson, which was to ultimately get control of his business and that music catalog. I think we have to look at that. Nothing changes, but as it relates to some of the stories we may have missed yesterday, there was the big story about the BP settlement. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I saw that story.
Yeah, 18.
Because we've been talking to the brothers
Yes.
up in northern Florida, how the black community has been decimated, and they haven't received any help from BP.
Yeah, I remember Benedict Gregory and Dr. Williams, Attorney Williams was working on that as well. So I think that's something that has to be talked about and examined, and how will that money be divvied out in terms of, again, particularly how it affects blacks in those 5 Gulf states down there. That was one of the main stories. Of course, what's happening now with these drills, Operation Jade Helm. You mentioned South Carolina, but Operation Jade Helm, and there's about 10 other drills that are already running concurrent with Operation Jade Helm that's not being talked about. These drills are taking place in the Pacific with the United States, Australia, and Japan. I think it's called Talisman Sabre. But there's also about 10 other drills that's already taken place with Operation Jade Helm, which is already kicked off right now. And they're taking place inside of America as well as in the Pacific as well, and in Mexico. So that's not getting the attention by the mainstream media. And as it relates to Charleston, South Carolina, I think we're really going to have to look at that as a big deception and misdirection being played on the people, particularly by those in high places. Our brother Steve Coakley would often talk about the Freemasons, whether we're talking about the Scottish Rite Masons, York Rite Masons, the Knights of Malta, because everything is taking place, Brother Carl, along the 33rd parallel down there in South Carolina. And I'm sure when Mark from Anaheim comes on, I'm sorry?
And that's where Charleston's located.
Yeah, on the 33rd parallel. When you have Rosie Greer on, I'm sure he can attest to RFK was assassinated on the 33rd parallel. Dr. King was assassinated on the 33rd parallel. Malcolm X was assassinated on the 3rd parallel. John F. Kennedy assassinated on the 33rd parallel. So none of this is an accident. Charleston, South Carolina, June the 17th, I believe, was the 193rd year anniversary when they had planned the uprisings or the revolts with Denmark Vesey. It also was the year that the Statue of Liberty was given to the United States, and on that day we had the Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, who was being sworn in when all of this kicked off in Charleston, South Carolina. So it's no accident when we see all of this that's taking place, but I think we have to be able to connect the dots. As it relates to the church burnings, all those churches that's been burned have been in FEMA Region 4. They haven't been out in Minnesota, Michigan, out west. They all have been in that same region of states that are in FEMA Region 4. So I think that in itself has to be looked at. That in itself has to be called into question and asked, what are these again, connections that Brother Steve Coakley have often talked about regarding what's going on in South Carolina, and then go back and look at history, as Brother Mark from Anaheim had talked about, because all of this ties into what we saw during the Civil War. But all this, again, was tied into the bankers. We were looking at this collapse right now, and what we see that's going on in South Carolina is tied into the bankers. They're going to use race. They're going to use religion. They're going to talk about the flags, but all of that is to manipulate the sheeple or manipulate the masses of the people, while at the same time the 1% up top can particularly go on and rule and try to push and further their end game, as we've often talked about. So I just thank you for, again, keeping your eyes on the prize as opposed to the surprise, and opening up your airways and allowing us to have this kind of information going back and forth.
All right, thanks, Darren.
Thank you.
Muhammad from Baltimore. 800-450-7876. Go to line 2. Sarita's joining us from L.A. Sarita?
Good morning to Carl and Kathy Hughes, who are both truly a blessing to the human race. You know, Carl, we cannot, like Dr. Cress Welsing said, we cannot get caught up in what white folks is claiming. Regardless to, first of all, back then, they were controlling the mindset.
Something, Sarita. As a woman, how does that make you feel when you hear these charges filed, accusations made against Bill Cosby?
I'm not quick to believe stuff, Carl. Even if he did do that deposition, people back then, white folks was threatening and this and that about stuff. So anything could have been concocted. Again, like I told family members, Bill Cosby to me, is a good man, but he was a lousy husband, meaning that his infidelity, they knew. I just told you, the guy who answered the phone, that white folks back in the day saw the weakness of black people when they were on the rise to this stardom and so on and so forth. And so what they did was they said, okay, so we know his weakness is sex. We know that he liked to have sex and this, that, and the other. What we're going to do is we're going to keep that in our back pocket. So whenever he get too big, as my mom used to say, too big for your britches, we're going to bring him down when he's too big. And after the Cosby Show, it was a wrap because it was so huge. Nothing on TV has even replaced what he did on the Cosby Show. I'm not saying that he's a saint. I'm not saying that. But I definitely am not quick to believe what white folks plaster all over the news and what they say and this, that, and the other. I'm not quick to do that. I'm not quick to throw him down the river. It's a history of folks saying, making people say things or telling them to say things in order to get their way. I'm just not quick to believe it. I'm not saying that I don't believe he didn't have sex with of age, not minor, of age women. I'm not saying that I don't believe, because I know he did. However, as far as rape is concerned, maybe that drug was what was in. Maybe those women were requesting that drug. You never know. And let me be clear, because I've been a victim of molestation, and family members of mine have too. So I would never make an excuse or, say, I give this person a pass because they're black. Never that. However, I do think twice when it comes to white folks in regards to my people, and that's just what it is. And I'll take my comments off here.